Hey, I'm your host, Mari Wagner, and you're listening to the Ever Be podcast, where faith meets lifestyle. I'm so excited you're here. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime follower, I know there's something here for you. Pull up a chair and listen in for insightful, real-life conversations and actionable steps on how to claim the full life God created you for. If you're a woman desiring to live a Christ-centered life in today's modern world, then this is for you. Welcome to the Ever Be podcast. All right, we are back with another episode of Ever Be, but this one is going to be pretty special because we have the most wonderful guest, probably my favorite guest that I will ever have on the podcast.
Well, I hope so. Just kidding.
My husband, Trey. Welcome to Ever Be.
Hello, Ever Be. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sweetie. We're going to be having you here a lot.
Yes,
so this is a good episode to kick things off for us and to help our listeners know more of who you are. I'm super excited about this episode because if you follow me on Instagram or if you go and check out my Instagram, you'll see Trey on my feed a lot. I talk about marriage and our relationship and Christ-centered relationships all the time. So he's definitely not a new face to my brand per se, but you haven't heard a lot from him to
I'm
this
more
point.
behind the scenes for sure.
Yeah, he's more behind the scenes and he just kind of makes appearances, but you haven't really heard his heart and his voice. And so I'm super excited for him to be on the podcast pretty regularly, I would say. You're going to be here quite a bit.
It'll be fun. It'll be a new experience for me, but
yeah,
I'm excited to do it with you.
Yeah, I'm excited for people to see just what we're like together in real life,
in
real time.
Yeah, I love it. All the fun and all the craziness. And I just want to say before we get started with all this that I'm so proud of you for everything you've done on Instagram and now with this podcast. This is a huge project that you've poured your heart and soul into. And I know everybody sees it on Instagram, but I'm really excited for them to see you in all your realness and all your beauty. It's going to be amazing.
Thanks, babe. Thank you.
Excited for this journey for you.
Thank you. And it would not be possible without you. We know that for sure. And now all the listeners know that. And I want you to know that. And I want to say a huge thank you to you because, oh my gosh, you guys, pulling off this podcast has been a journey.
Podcasting is hard enough. You add video into the mix and it's a whole nother beast. So.
We're not tech experts. Okay. We strategy and business and marketing, but tech.
It's we know how to handle an iPhone, but it's
literally this was not our expertise. And I could not have done this by myself. So this podcast is up and running. Literally, thank you to Trey. Because he has become my official, pretty much certified tech man. He's figured out every tech issue we've had with sound and video and platforms and editing and all that kind of stuff. Because we knew we wanted this to be high quality, and that made for us to learn a lot of new skills and solve a lot of tech problems. So
just gotta figure it out as we go.
Yes.
We'll run into much more problems, I'm sure.
Yes, we will. But for now, this dream is finally coming true, and it's largely thanks to Trey.
Well, I love making your dreams come true. It's my job.
You. Thank you. Okay, today we're going to be sharing about my favorite love story, which happens to be our love story.
We're a little bit biased, but yes, I agree.
A little bit biased, but I think
really
it's one of the best ones the Lord has written. And I love our story so much because it is, like we talked about before we were recording, just so God-centered, and the way the Lord brought us together and worked in each of our lives to get us to where we were in our lives to be ready to meet each other is so beautiful. So I think let's just dive right in.
Let's do it.
Let's just start from the beginning.
Where do we meet?
Well, before we actually met, I found out you existed from a friend. So I was a freshman in college in 2017, and I had just broken up with a high school boyfriend that I had, and it was just kind of an immature relationship. Ended, and I was just kind of super over boys and bad relationships. And I remember talking about it with one of my good friends, and I was like, boys are literally the worst. I don't know if I'll find the one. Is he out there? What am I gonna do? And she just kept telling me oh man, I wish you could meet this guy. I wish you could meet this guy. I'm like, what guy? And she kept talking about this guy back home, which for her was Colorado, and we were going to school in Washington, and I grew up in Washington. So my life was not outside of Washington.
Yeah. You're why are you telling me about this boy?
I was like, this is so irrelevant. He's in Colorado. And then at one point she mentioned that you were still in high school. She was like, this guy like, yeah, like, he's a senior, so. And I was like, okay, bummer. Like, this is like so not going to work out. Like, this is so stupid, whatever. And I just really like brushed it off. And a few months later, so that was like beginning of freshman year. And then like by the end of freshman year, a few months later, she was like, "You won't believe this, Mari. That guy I told you about in the fall is coming to our school. Like he's gonna be here next year. Like you should totally meet him." And I remember again like brushing it off like, okay, one, that's a little bit crazy, but like let's talk about how he's younger again. That's not gonna work. He's gonna be a freshman.
He's basically still in high
He's
school.
yeah, basically still in high school. I'm like, I'm not dating any
Way too
immature boys. Like, I'm way too good for that. I'm not doing that again. And she was like, whatever.
And to be fair, I probably was at the time.
Probably. But I just remember her always saying, like, he's like literally like you and a guy. And I mean, I guess the Lord was going to bring us together eventually
Yeah.
because we did meet a few months down the road the next year, my sophomore year, your freshman
Yeah.
year now.
So it was my freshman year. It was in the fall, and I was walking into the cafeteria, and I see my friend that Mari knew, and I said hi to her, and we like walked into the cafeteria together, and she was with this other girl, Mari, and she introduced us.
Yeah, I remember walking into the cafeteria and, we were walking in with you and my friend was like, "Hey, Mari, like, you should meet my friend Trey." And she kind of made those eyes at me. Like, if you're a girl, like when you're like trying to like hint something at your friend, you kind of have like these like big bug eyes, like, "Hey, Mari, like, I want you to meet this guy." And I was like, oh gosh, this is probably the guy she's been talking about. So I was like, I know who she's talking about. I'm like, "Hi, like, nice to meet you," like still like not super
Right.
interested, just like
And
whatever.
this is all like between you and your friend. I have
Yeah.
no
Oh
idea
yeah. He's
what's
got
going on.
oh
This
yeah.
is this is a girl I vaguely knew
Yeah.
from high school, and it was just like, hey,
Yeah. Like
that's
she
all I know.
hadn't ever talked to you about me
No,
or anything like that. Like this was
not
so
at all.
new to you.
Yeah.
And so we went and got in line to get omelets. And as soon as we like Trey and I made our orders, the girl we were with, my friend was like, "Oh, I changed my mind. Like, I'm gonna go get something else." And omelets take a little bit to make. And so I was kind of like, wait, like, don't leave
Don't
me with
leave
this
me.
stranger. Like, what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do? This is gonna be so awkward. And we like sat in line for like 10 minutes. And I remember walking away just kind of being like, oh, like that actually wasn't as awkward as I thought. Like that was weirdly like a really easy
Yeah, easy, natural
conversation.
conversation. We got past the where are you from? What's your major?
Yeah.
The normal conversations in
Yeah.
college, and had a good conversation that was really seamless and
Yeah.
easy, honestly.
It
It
was
was
just
just easy.
easy.
That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it was just easy. And then weirdly enough, we like split ways. Like I went to go eat breakfast with my friend, you went to go eat breakfast, and then
We
like
didn't see each other.
I didn't see you for
And
like
we
the next 2 months.
both like forgot that interaction even happened.
Yeah.
And I think it's hilarious that it was even we'll get to how we re-met again in just a minute for the second time, but what felt like the first time. But it took a few weeks of us like knowing each other again before we realized, wait, we've already met before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it took a while
Funny.
for us to like recount this scenario and be
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, wait, that was you.
Yeah, yeah.
So yes, we didn't see each other for a couple months. And in the meantime, I feel like the Lord was working in both of our lives like very intentionally. And
For
I mean,
sure.
we see how the Lord played out our story. And so looking back, like it's all his perfect timing and it all
Right.
made sense. But basically like in those few months, so when we met, it was probably like in the fall, like maybe like October, November, or something of like that first semester. And then we didn't meet again until February, second semester. And so in those few months, I pretty much was kind of going through like my own like reversion of just like coming to know Christ for myself again, having all these questions and moments of prayer where I was like surrendering my life to God and just like changing the way that I was living. And there was a moment where, and I talk about this a little bit more in depth in the episode that's like my testimony. So if you want to hear the full story, go listen to that. But basically, like I had a moment of surrender where I was like, Lord, like I need to like serve you on campus. I just like want my life to be like glorifying you, like use me. And I started hearing about this organization called Focus and how they do Bible studies on campus. And so I came back to campus that second semester, like really excited to implement that into my school and our campus. I really wanted to like create a more vibrant Catholic community. And so I was like, I'm going to come to campus and like try and get these Bible studies up and running and like see if like maybe like the ministry office can help me like get it going. And
So before you continue, where I'm at in
yeah.
all this is I was, had a little falling away. I grew up Catholic, but I fell away a little bit during high school, and I really wanted to refine my faith because I knew it was true, and I knew that that's what I wanted deep down inside was a true and authentic Catholic faith. And so I was searching for that my freshman year of college, and I went to this focus conference. It not Seek, it was SLS at the time,
Hmm.
but I went to that conference like right around New Year's, and I wouldn't say like that conference specifically changed my life, but it gave me a couple tools and a little bit of motivation to then take back to campus. And similar to you, was going through this reversion,
Hmm.
and the Lord was doing a lot of really good things in my heart and preparing me. And I got back to campus desiring more authentic Catholic community and not finding it. So thinking, hey, I just got to start this.
Yeah. So we had those similar desires. And then I think like romantically wise, like where I was at, like I was kind of on my own personal like dating fast. Like ever since I had that kind of like bad relationship, I had never really like found like great guys on campus and like had a couple of relationships like weren't great. And then sophomore year had a moment where I was like, I'm gonna focus on my relationship with the Lord. So I wasn't really even like looking for guys or dating or
Yeah.
anything like that. And I feel like you were kind of in
Yeah. I
a
mean, I was
similar.
you were like 2 steps ahead of me.
Okay, yeah.
So I was still, you could say, involved with
Yeah.
a high school girl, trying to figure that out and navigating that, and knowing that that wasn't leading me to Christ
Mhm.
and leading me to heaven. Like I knew that I wanted separation from that, but yeah, I was still in the midst of figuring all that
Figuring
out.
that
So I
out.
was
Yeah.
definitely not in a spot to be looking for new romantic relationships because I was still trying to sort through the one I was currently in and
Yeah.
navigate that. But yeah, I definitely Lord was doing some things in my heart for
Yeah.
sure.
So then I got back to campus that second semester after feeling this like desire to like do something on campus to create more Catholic community. And I went into the ministry office and set up a meeting with like one of the head people there to like pitch them my idea and be like, we need to bring focus. And if they didn't bring focus, I was like, I want to do it like myself. Like, can you help me like find leaders or something? And so we had this whole meeting with one of the leaders in the ministry office. And her response after I laid everything out was like, so this guy came in here like 2 days ago with kind of like the same idea, talking about focus, talking about Bible studies, talking about a more vibrant Catholic community on campus. His name is Trey Wagner. Like, have you met him before? Like, have you talked to him? And I was like, why does this name sound so familiar? And like I started to like rack my brain. I'm like, why do I know this name? And then it clicked and I realized it was the same guy that my friend had talked to me about all of freshman year and that she introduced me to
That one
that one time
morning in
in.
the omelet line.
Yeah, and at that point I didn't remember that I had met him in the omelet line. Yeah, I just remembered like this was
Oh,
the
this
guy
is the guy
that.
from
Yeah,
Colorado.
from Colorado that she like kept talking about. And so I just kind of laughed through it and I was like, LOL, like,
Dang it, now I have to
yeah,
ask my friend to
I
send me
know.
up
And
with this guy.
so I was like, yes, I know him kind of, like, I can get connected with him, and the lady was like, "Okay, well, we can't bring focus right now, but, like, why don't you just do it yourself? Like, why don't you just go find this Trey guy and you guys can, like, come up with something and, like, get it going?"
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I texted my friend and I was like, "Okay, listen, like, I need you to set up a coffee date, like, us 3, because like, I don't want him to get the wrong idea, so, like, I want you to be there, and it's, like, strictly business, okay? I just wanna talk about Bible studies and, like, his thoughts on,
Business.
like." Yeah, his thoughts on, like, what he wants to do on campus and see if we're even on the same page. Because I also hadn't really met anybody that, like, cared about
Yeah.
faith as much, so I was like, "This guy probably doesn't even, like, know what he's talking about."
Mhm.
And
So Cassie texted me, our friend, and it was like, "Hey, we need to like, I have a friend who wants to do Bible studies, like,
yeah,
let's get together." And so
yeah,
the 3 of us, we met up at the student center and just, like, had a cup of coffee one evening and
yeah,
just hashed out what our hopes and desires and dreams were
mhm.
for our own faith, our college, university, or the Catholic community on campus. And it was a conversation that just was amazing. Like it was just
Yeah,
nonstop back and forth, tons of passion, tons of energy. It was
yeah,
so natural. And it was like the first time somebody that I felt like I'd ever met matched me in my energy and my passion and my desire and my love for the Lord. And Although I was still like new and all that, I had that new zeal, but it was matched by you. And it was like, we joke about this now, but
Yeah.
we don't even remember our friend being there. We were
Yes.
like,
No, I know. Like, I literally remember, like, I remember it was a Monday night. I know because I, like, used to watch The Bachelor with all my friends, and, like, I was missing The Bachelor, so it was, like, a big deal. And I'm, like, going to get coffee with this guy, and I kept telling my girlfriends, like, they're like, "Oh, you're going on a date?" I'm like, "No, guys, it's literally not a date. Like, he's not even, like, cute probably." Like,
probably.
it and then I kind of remember, like, sitting down and, like, maybe our friend was there, but, like, I, like, literally, like, don't really even remember her being there throughout our conversation. And honestly and she actually was for most of it.
Yeah,
And I
she was.
think back and I think she did leave in the
She
middle of
probably
it.
was like, okay, I've been here an hour.
But
I'm clearly not needed here any
like,
longer.
thinking back,
So
I'm like, that was probably
she
so
probably
awkward for
excused
her.
herself.
Like, she probably didn't say a single word, and it was probably all Trey and I, like, talking and just, like, locked into each
Yeah.
other. Because I do remember that conversation was, like, unmatched to, like, any other interaction I'd had with someone before about faith or, like, let alone another, like, guy.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like, I hadn't really met a lot of people in my life who, like, cared that much about their faith as much as I did or, like, wanted to live it out, and I'd never really met a guy who, like, was strong in his Catholic faith and, like, passionate about it and, like, wanted to do something to make it better on campus. Like, I was like, "What? Who is this guy?" But even even though it was amazing, I remember, like, I didn't even, like, have any, like, romantic thoughts during that
Zero.
conversation.
Zero. I had none.
Like, I wasn't even, like and, like, I was, like, kinda boy crazy the first couple years of college. So, like, it was, like, different for me to, like, meet you and, like, not even think, like, "Oh my gosh, he's super cute. I wonder when I'm gonna see him again." Like, "Oh my gosh, is he gonna text?" Like, I didn't think anything. It was just, like, whoa. Like, I was just in awe of the man that you were and the person that Trey was. I remember walking away and just being like, "This guy is so awesome, like, I want to be his best friend." Like, I literally wanna be so close with this guy and, like,
Yeah, I just want to be around you.
I just
Like
wanna be
that.
around
That's what I
you.
felt.
Yeah,
Just like the conversation was so free and just fun. I
yeah.
was like, I just want to be around this person more.
I
She was
remember
awesome.
too, something else that really stood out to me about that conversation was that, like, I've always been someone that has, like, big dreams and big ideas and, like, you're saying, like, passionate, and I had learned throughout my life, like, when to tone that down and, like, kinda when to let that go a little bit, and I felt like more often, like, I would feel like I needed to tone it down in front of people because people never really match that, and, like, even in, like, school projects, like, I would, like, wanna do this extravagant thing, people are like, that's too much, like, that's too much work, like,
Come
that's too hard,
on.
you know? And so I remember kinda, like, treading the water, like, testing the waters when I was talking to Trey and being like, "Okay, like, I'm gonna pitch him, like, my first, like, kinda, like, baseline idea," you know? And
Start
then
small.
yeah, start small, see what you think. And then he'd be like, "Oh, yeah, and let's do this." And I'd be like, "Oh,
Whoa.
whoa," like, he totally went for that, like, "Okay." And then I'd be like, "Oh, and then what if, like, we add this?" Or, like, "What if we do this?" You know? And he'd be like, "Oh, yes, that's amazing, like, and we could make this happen." And he just kept going, like, he just, like, took the idea and, like, kept running with it and, like, added his own. And I remember just being like, "This guy hasn't said no to any of my crazy idea." Like, this is wild, like, we're talking about a whole college campus, and he and I are 2 people who are just, like, small players
Yeah.
in this big ocean, and I'm like, "How does he, like why is he not running away from me right now?" Like, I sound crazy, like, wanting to do all these
Yeah.
crazy things.
And literally nothing has changed.
And
Whatever. 6, 7, 8 years later, we're in the exact same
we're in the
position.
exact same position, pitching all these crazy ideas, and Trey's like, "Let's make it happen." So so that was great. That was a great little coffee date. But we walked away,
Yeah. We're just like,
just
okay,
friends.
great. Like,
Yeah, let's do it.
let's schedule another time to get together and see what like let's start these Bible studies. That's the big takeaway. Like
Yeah.
we want to lead some Bible studies on campus. Let's get one going. Let's start with that. And so we just had another date to get together to talk about Bible studies. So that's how we spent the first few weeks together. It was basically all of our conversations were centered around
Bible study.
faith and Bible studies.
Yeah. And I remember, like, my friends asking me about him often because I would come back from a meeting with him and be like, "Wow, like, this guy's so awesome." Like, I would just be like, "This guy's so awesome." And they're like, "You like him." You know, they'd be teasing me like, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna hang out with Trey. Like, are you sure you don't like him?" I'd be like, "No, guys, he's literally a freshman." Like, I would always bring that up. I'm like, "No, guys, he's literally a freshman. Like, you guys know, like, I'm not gonna date a
Yeah.
freshman." Like,
I
you know,
can't stoop that low.
I would
The
always
freshman man is low.
I don't know why I had that so ingrained in my head, but Like, I think there was actually a moment when I realized that I liked you. Like, I don't think I actually realized, like, internally that, like, I was developing feelings, but we were at lunch at the cafeteria. We had a lot of big moments at the
Yeah.
cafeteria.
I mean, when you're a sophomore in college, that's
You spent a lot of
yeah,
time there.
it's a central activity.
And so I know we were at the cafeteria, you, me, 2 other girls who we had recruited to be, like, Bible study leaders with us. And you walked away to, like, get another plate of food, and one of my close friends was like, "Hey, he's, like, kinda cute, right?" And I was like, "Whoa." Like, I felt, like, a defensiveness, like, a protectiveness in my heart for a second of, like, "Whoa, like,
Wait,
wait, you can't think he's cute, like, hands off, like, if anyone's gonna think he's cute, it's me, like, you're not allowed to think he's cute." And it was so weird to me that, like, my heart had that reaction of just like, "Whoa, like, why do you think like, don't think he's cute," you know? And that's kinda when I started realizing, like, "Wait, like, why do I care? Like,
yeah.
do I maybe, like it? Like, I think I have a crush on this guy." And then you sat down, you came back and you sat down with your plate of food, and it was like I saw you in a whole new light. And it was, like, sparkles and, like, you could hear, like, like,
All of a sudden, I was
lovey-dovey.
sucky freshman
Yeah.
college boy.
No, all of a sudden, I'm like,
Like,
"Oh,
this is
wait."
attractive man.
Yes. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like,
So
wow, he's
mature.
so attractive."
I
And that
grew up 5 years in that
in that 30
trip
seconds,
to get
1
food.
minute. And that's kinda how I knew I started to like you, and I didn't say anything for a while, like, we still kept hanging out, and I was kind of trying to, like, decipher what I was feeling because at that point, I knew I was starting to feel something, and, like, the way our relationship was heading, we were becoming really good friends.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we were spending a lot of time
Yeah,
together, and like we said, like, a lot of it was centered around faith and Bible studies, and, like, that was, like, what I wanted.
for sure, yeah.
And at that point, I think, like, if we back up a little bit, like, those months before I had met you, when I was kinda going through my own, like, reversion and stuff like that, for the first time, I'd started to intentionally pray for my future husband, and so I had this list that I had made in my notes in my phone that I would pray with every night, and that kinda helped me, like, build, like, a new standard for, like, who I wanted that man to be so that when I did date someone else, I wasn't, like, letting go of standards. I was just like, "He's either gonna meet these or I'm not gonna date him."
Yeah.
And you were, like, checking those boxes as we were becoming friends and hanging out, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, what's going on?"
Like, don't check another one.
Like, I'm not ready for this." And we also had a religion class together, and so we were spending time because we were also, like, studying for that,
Mhm.
for tests and, like, reading each other's papers and stuff like that, and
Yeah, and I mean, it was such a gift looking back on it that
yeah.
our relationship was started from talking about Bible studies and how we wanted to transform the Catholic community on our campus and studying for this religion class, which was on the Gospels. And so we would
Yeah.
just read the New Testament and the Gospels together and then just share what we felt and like what we thought about each of the passages. It's like that was our
Yeah.
homework was to do that. So we would just do that together. And
Yeah.
so
Like, we
it
were
was
studying, but, like, studying together literally looked like doing Lectio Divina.
yeah, we didn't know it was called that at the
We
time,
didn't
but,
know it
like,
was
it
that.
was we're, like, reading the Bible and sharing our thoughts on it with each
Yeah.
other, and
What
it's
the Lord
beautiful,
was
and it was like,
speaking.
I had never done anything like that
Me either.
with anybody in my life prior to that. Like, I was in youth group and stuff, but, like, that's in high school, that's, like, not
Yeah.
anywhere near this. I didn't never had a friend that I was, like, pursuing Christ with,
Yeah.
and
I hadn't even done that, I feel like, with, like, girlfriends either.
oh,
Like,
yeah,
we would, like,
same.
talk about faith, but, like, I don't think I'd really, 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 like, sat down to, like, dive deep into, like, what the Lord was saying through scripture and, like,
No.
how it moved me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that was,
No.
like, new to me too.
It's beautiful. It was like, what an amazing way that the Lord just blessed and kickstarted our relationship,
Yeah.
and we were still just friends at that point.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I remember very vividly this one time we had in the library where we were studying for that religion test. And that was one of the moments where I was like, "Oh my gosh, I really like this guy." We studied for this test for 4 hours or like 4 and a half
Well, we were in
hours.
the library for 4 hours.
Okay, yeah.
Not sure how much time we spent studying, but we were in the library for 4 hours,
Yes.
nonstop talking. It's like one conversation just continues,
Yes,
which
exactly.
is hard for me. I don't know how I would talk that long with
I
you at the beginning
literally
because,
don't
like, I
know.
can't do that.
Not anymore, you can't. But we were studying for this test for so long, and like Trey said, I don't know how hard we studied, and the fruits showed the next day of, like, where my head was at because okay, I want to say this first. I was a good student in college. Okay. I got good grades. But after this test, I got a 77 and he got a 90. And we
Like, we
studied
studied the same things,
the
Mari.
same
Like, we did
thing.
everything together. Like, I didn't do any other studying outside of that time with you.
I don't know what happened. Like, I was in, like, lovey-dovey land because I didn't retain any
Yeah.
information, and I felt horrible because 'cause I'm like, "Religion is my jam." Like, I know my faith. Like, why did I get such a bad grade? Clearly, my head was somewhere else.
Yeah. You're just
But the reason why that moment or that night of studying was so, I think, like, pivotal for our relationship, at least, like, the way I viewed it, was because that night is when I realized, like, Trey was the one I was gonna marry. And this is really crazy what I'm about to tell you guys because this is, like, before Trey and I even talked about liking each other.
Yeah.
Like,
We were
we were
just
not
friends.
dating. We were literally just friends, and I had known him for, like, 3.5 weeks at this point. But if you remember, just a few minutes ago, I was talking about that list on my phone that I had made of, like, all the attributes that I wanted in my future husband, like, the main
Mhm.
characteristics that I wanted him to have that I would pray with every night. So I had that on my phone, and while we're studying for this religion test, we're taking a break, and, Trey had, like, a project for another
Yeah, some
class.
leadership class.
Do you wanna explain what the project was?
It was basically trying to figure out what kind of, like, leader I am, so I was polling and asking a lot of people who knew me really well from back home, like, what qualities or what are, like, the key, like, top 3 to 5 words that you would describe me as, and then I would, like, put it all together like a
Yeah,
some sort of, uh, visual
visual
format. Yeah.
representation, and you had to ask, like, coaches
Yeah,
and
coaches,
teachers, family
teachers,
member like, people who really knew you.
friends, parents,
Yeah,
people who spent the most time with me, who knew me the deepest.
yeah, and at this point, Trey knew I was pretty artsy, like, if you got to know
Oh,
that
yeah.
about me pretty quickly, and so he was like, "Can you help me with this project? Like, what kind of, like, way should I, visually put it together, like, be artsy and all that kinda stuff?" And I was like, "Okay, I just met you, like, 3 weeks ago, so I don't actually, like, really know you." So I was like, "Why don't you just share, like, what are the ways people have described you? Like, what are the words other people have used to describe your character?" And I remember you told me, you're like, "Okay, well, I compiled together, like, the most common words people have used, and, like, the top 3 ways people have described me were honest, charming, and loyal." And those are the exact top 3 characteristics that I had written in my notes in my phone. So, like, the number 1 was loves God above all things, and I already knew that given how we started our relationship and what we were doing, like, I already knew that that was a given. And then the next 3 were honest, charming, and loyal in that order, those exact words, and I feel like, those are, like, particular words that people don't usually use, and so when you said those words to me, I felt like I saw a ghost. So, like, I felt like my heart stopped, like, my hands went cold because I was like, "This is too weird. This
Yeah,
is too crazy." And I, like,
that's
remember
wild.
I kinda, like, stepped aside, like, pulled out my phone, like, just needed to, like, double check the things I had been praying for every single day, and sure enough, on my phone, those were the top ones. And I remember, like, putting my phone away and kinda, like, turning back to him and trying to keep it so cool. But, like, I turned around and I looked back at him, and, like, in my head, I knew. I was like, "This is the man I'm gonna marry." Like, I'm looking at my husband. I'm looking at my future husband
And
right now.
from that moment on, your brain was shut off the rest of the night.
And that's, ladies and gentlemen, that's why I got a
So
C plus on my
so
test.
you go to the professor and you're like, "This is why. I promise you, like, can we retake the test? I just met my husband.
I
Hey,
just met my husband. It
you
was
need to
pretty
excuse this."
monumental. Like, let's forget the test grade. I just won
Yeah.
in life.
So at this point, I'm still thinking of Mari as just this awesome person that I
Yeah.
love, love, love being around. Like, I'm having these 4-hour conversations with that is so unlike me. Like, when I'm with her, I'm so alive. This is a person that, like, I am the person that I've always wanted to be when I'm around you. And so, like,
Mhm,
I just felt my heart was so alive with you.
mhm.
However, because, like I said earlier, I was still kind of
Figuring out a
figuring
relationship.
out this relationship with this girl back home. So I still basically had shut off the possibility or the thought of anything beyond friends with
Yeah,
Mari at this point. So any romantic feelings are just non-existent
yeah,
in my head right now. It's just like I love being around this person. She's awesome. Like we have the best time together.
yeah. which is hilarious. I already knew we were gonna get married,
Yeah.
and you were like, not even remotely there.
Haven't even like considered like
Dating.
possibility of even dating this girl.
Yeah. But yet you like you said, you love spending time with me, and yet you would, like, always ask to get coffee to talk about Bible study, and that was something that I was kinda starting to catch on to and kind of overthink a little bit of, like, he's like he would wait for me after class at the door, when, like, guy's waiting for you at the door, you're like, "Oh, like, he wants to talk to me, he
What's he
wants
gonna
to hang
say?
out with me, what's he gonna say?" And he'd be like, "Hey, like, I was wondering, like, do you wanna go get coffee with me later, and, like, we can talk about Bible study or, like, like, plan the next Bible
It's great. I
study," and
had this like easy kind of cop out
yeah.
excuse to spend time with you.
Yeah, and so I'd always be like, "Yeah, sure, of course, like, we need to plan Bible study, so
Like we gotta plan a Bible study this week, so
let's
let's hang
do
out.
it." And we would go on these coffee dates, and the first time we did that, we had coffee for an hour and a half. I remember it was, like, the Starbucks by my dorm, and we didn't talk about Bible study
No.
once. Like, Bible study did not get mentioned.
Yeah.
We talked about
So
our
then we had to do
families.
it again. And so then
Yeah,
I was like, Mari, we gotta go get coffee again. We gotta plan that Bible study.
and I just remember being, like, equally excited and confused because at this point, I'm starting to develop feelings, and I'm noticing that you're wanting to spend time with me. You're asking me to get coffee. That coffee date was amazing. Like, we talked about our families. You talked about baseball, what we wanted to do this summer, just, like, our lives, like,
Yeah.
who we were, and I remember walking away from that Bible study and going back into my dorm, into my apartment with, like, my roommates. My roommates were home, and I ran into my best friend's room and, like, face planted on her bed and just screamed into the pillow, and I was like, like, I think I like him." Like, I, like, didn't want to like him. I don't know why. Like, I was just, like, afraid to like him and just,
Yeah.
like, again, like I said, like, I was on my own personal dating fast. I was like, "I'm not dating." Like, "These boys here aren't good enough, like, this just can't be it," and I remember being
Mhm.
like, "I think I like him, like, what do I do?" And they'd be like, "Well, does he like you back?" And I'm like, I don't know." Like,
So it makes it even scarier.
yeah, so it makes it even scarier, and at this point, like I said, like, I'd been a little boy crazy the first couple years of school, and, like, I hadn't really experienced a lot of rejection, like, I was, like, really scared, like, for the first time of just, like, "Oh my gosh, like, I don't know if he likes me." Like, this is scary because, like, I'm starting to develop, like, real feelings, like, not just like, "Oh, wow, this guy's cute in my math class." Like, no, like, this man is amazing, like, I'm, like, liking him.
He's supposed to be my husband.
Well, yeah, he's supposed to be my husband. And there was a moment where I, like, walked into the ministry office, honestly, probably to try and run into you. Like, I didn't have a purpose of being there. I remember, like, I was just gonna walk in to, like, quote, unquote, like, ask someone a question,
Mhm.
and I sort of hoped that you were gonna be there so we could just run into each other and say hi, and sure enough, you were there talking to another guy, like an older leader of some sort of other small group. And so I sat down and, like, acted like I was just doing my homework in there because sometimes students would go in and do that. And I remember, like, kind of, like, eavesdropping on your guys' conversation a little bit because I wanted to, like, "Oh, like, what are they talking about?" And the older guy, I think he was, like, a junior or senior, he was kinda, like, big broing you, he's
Yeah.
like, "Alright,
Mhm.
bro, like, tell me, like, are you dating anybody? Like, is there a girl?" And so my ears perked up because I'm like, "Oh, like, I wonder if he's gonna, like, say anything about me,"
Yes.
Like, he's probably gonna be like, "Oh, I kinda like this girl in my class," like, and then I heard you say, like, like, it's really complicated right now." And I was like, "Wait,
Wait.
I don't think my relationship with him is complicated right now. So this can't be me he's talking about." And I remember, like, my heart, like, shattered into a million pieces, and I grabbed my stuff and I walked out before I could talk to you, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" And I called my best friend, and she was in the library, which is the building next door, and she met me outside, and I just ran, and I just cried to her, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is all wrong." Like, all those fears, like, came true. I was like, "This is all wrong." Like, I knew I shouldn't be developing feelings for this guy. Like, he doesn't like me. Like, I thought, like, this was supposed to be the guy. Like, I was so sure, like, this was the guy. Like, the Lord was, like, leading me to, and, like, this can't be true. And, like, I'm crying. Like, he has another girl. And, like, oh my gosh. Like, just, like, so sad.
And yeah, I mean, that conversation, I was talking about this girl from back home, and it was complicated at the time. And I was just trying to navigate that, but it became very uncomplicated shortly after because then I broke up with her. Once I had broken up with this girl, it allowed my eyes and my heart to be like, okay, wait, maybe I do see Mari as something more. Like, I do love spending time with her. And like, I am so full of life when I'm around her. I just like, I want to be next to her all the
Mhm.
time. And so I started feeling that, but I'm also just like, dude, I've been in relationships for the past like 4 years of my life. And
Mhm.
I am like, none of them were very holy or centered on Christ. And I am like just entering into this reversion. There's a ton of ways I need to grow in virtue and just like rebuild just my relationship with God and have that like be my focus for now. Like that
Mhm.
was what I wanted, was to just focus on that and not just go hop from one relationship to another, to another, to another. And just like, I just wanted time to just be with the Lord
Mhm.
and figure out who I was and who he was calling me to be.
Yeah. And I totally get that because, like you said, I was kinda, like,
Yeah.
2 steps ahead of you. Like, I'd just gone through that time period, which is why when I met you, I was like, "Oh my gosh, wait, like, I'm still, like, not there, not ready yet," you know?
Mhm.
Um, a and then after that, like, I don't know, maybe, like, a few days later or something, or no, not a few days later, like, maybe, like, a week or 2 later, you asked me to get brunch, like, after we had all
A
these.
step up from coffee.
Yeah, step up from coffee. So we
Okay.
had all these coffee dates, and my friends were like, "Are you sure they're not dates?" And I'm like, "No, like, I don't know." Like, I'm not sure, but I also don't think they are because, like, I'm paying for my own coffee and, like, but we are talking about our lives, like, it feels like a date. And so they were like, "Okay, okay, like, he asked you to brunch, so, like, if he pays for brunch, then it's a date." And that's how you know if, like, what his intentions are, okay? Now, side note here, then let's not do this, okay? Like, if you wanna date a girl, say the word date, okay? Don't let her be all confused. We learned that lesson. Because I was so confused going into this date. I'm like, "I hope it's a date, but I'm not really sure." And honestly, the type of personality I am, I was ready to just, like, be blunt and ask about, like, what was going on.
Yeah,
But
and well, and like to be fair, in my head, it was not a date.
right.
Like I wasn't asking this girl on a date. That was not my intention. I never like didn't cross my mind. Like I was not asking Mari on a date.
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, you want to go get brunch? We got Bible study like this week. We got to plan it. Let's go
Yeah.
get brunch and have a meal. It's better than coffee."
Yeah.
So we're at brunch and we don't talk about Bible study whatsoever. It's just a classic. We're talking about life, talking about our dreams, talking about everything that else is going on in our life, and just getting to know each other. And like always, we're having an amazing time. And then the waiter brings the check. I'm intentionally letting this check sit on the table. Like this is not a date. I'm not picking up the check.
Right.
I don't want to give the wrong message. Like I'm just gonna let this check sit here. Mari is so enthralled with our conversation that like 20 minutes go by and nobody touches the check.
Well, and
And
I think I got in my head about, like, my friend saying, like, "If he pays, it's a date. If he doesn't, then it's not." And so I'm like, I'm gonna wait for him to say, like, "Okay, like, do you wanna Venmo request me?" Or like, "Okay, let's split it," you know? Or for him to pick up the check and just pay. And instead, like, we're just talking, like, we're just having a great time. And so in my head, I'm like, "Oh, he just wants to keep talking. Like, he just wants to keep this going." And he doesn't pick up the check, and I don't pick up the check,
I'm
and
like just
he
sitting
doesn't pick
there.
it up because he's waiting for me to
I'm
offer.
just waiting
And
for somebody to be like, okay, like Trey, like here, like let's flip the check, or like
yeah,
just give me some sort of indication that like you know the check's there and
yeah.
we need to pay this. And like whether you ask me to, are you gonna pay or do you want to split it or anything like that. But after 20 minutes go by, I'm like, okay, I just put my card in it, and then we just kept talking.
Yeah.
And then a couple minutes later, the waiter picks it up, we pay,
And so
and
in my head,
at
I'm
this point,
like,
I'm just like, I'm not gonna be a jerk. Like I'm just not gonna be cheap and just like ask her to Venmo request me. So I was like, all right, whatever. Like I'll just let it slide. Like
wish you could have, but I'm glad you didn't. Anyways, I thought, like, "Oh, this means it's a date." Like, he picked up the check, he paid, this is officially a
I think I
date.
specifically asked you to get the Uber too. 'Cause I was like,
Yes, you did.
I was like, okay, because I picked up the check. I was like, I need to like,
Made her pay
like
something.
make her pay something so it's not a date. So I was
Yes.
like, okay, like why don't you order the Uber now? Like, I
Yeah.
got the check, you get the Uber.
Yeah, and I did, and I was like, "Okay, fair enough, like, I'll get the Uber, whatever." And then after that, like, we went back to your dorm and, like, we were gonna do more studying, so then we went and picked up your backpack, then we went back to my apartment, picked up my backpack, and then we were, like, walking to the library. And I am someone who, like, if I have, like, strong feelings about something, like, I can't really keep it in, like, I can't really hide it. And so at this point, I'm like, I need to know what is going on because I am developing feelings, and he paid for the check. I need to know if this was a date or not. And so I'm, like, building up the courage. I remember in my head, I literally counted to 3, like, counted down from 3, and I was like, "Okay, 3, 2, 1." And then I, like, said the words. I'm like, "I need to ask you something." And you were like, what?
Okay.
Like, okay. And I was like, I am wondering, like, was that a date or not? And like, I just straight up
Yeah.
asked you,
No, it was
like,
just, was that a date?
yeah,
Like, it wasn't like some cool,
no.
like, calculated thing. It was just like, was that a date?
Like, I
And
just like,
it just threw me. It threw me off guard so hard. I was just like, I stopped in my tracks and I was just stunned. I'm like,
yeah, I
I'm like
really,
in my head, I'm like, okay, that no, it wasn't a date. I can't tell her that because I don't want her to get the wrong impression that because I do like spending time with her. I don't want to shut the door for future dates in the future. I want to keep that door open, but it wasn't a date. So what do I say? And so
yeah,
I like think for what I in my head it feels like 20 seconds. It probably was like 3.
it probably
But
was like 3.
I say, well, I didn't, it was like, well, not exactly.
Yes, yes, you were like, not
Not exactly.
exactly,
It's
but like,
like I really enjoyed spending time with
yeah,
you, and I wanna do it again, but it wasn't my intention when I asked you
yes.
to go to brunch. It wasn't my intention for it to be a date.
Yes, and then I remember then I, like, asked more
And well, then
questions.
she's just like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "Okay." Like, there's a lot more that I need to fill
Sure.
you in on and
Yeah,
catch you up to speed on
yeah,
because up to this point, everything with my relationship from high school back home, I had not shared with Mari. So
yeah,
I was like, "Okay." So we just, like, I think we sat on, like, a park bench, just like
yeah. Because I remember I brought up, like, "Okay, I I get if it's not, but also, like, I want you to know why I think it might be," and, like, kinda give you the background, like, "We're going on all these coffee dates, and we say we're gonna talk about Bible study, but we're not talking about Bible study, and, like, we hang out all the time, and, like,
yeah.
we,
I
like,
mean, it's
spend
totally
hours on
yeah,
end."
totally,
Like,
totally valid question. Absolutely. Like, it should be asked.
yeah.
I would encourage women to ask that question
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
hopefully it's not
Yeah,
confusing.
hopefully the guy is straightforward and not like me, but
But then we sat on a park bench because you were like, "Okay,
alright,
I, like,
there's
need to tell you something."
yeah, so then I was like, I literally just broke up with a girl from back home, like, 2 days ago.
Right.
So that's why it wasn't a date because I'm still trying to figure that out. I feel like I'm in this position where I've been in relationships for the past 4 or 5 years, and I just want some time to, like, relearn who God is and who he's calling me to be, and
Mhm.
that's where I am. But I really like spending time with you, and, like, I do wanna keep hanging out.
Yeah. And I think you were like, "In the future, like, when I'm ready, like, maybe," like, you kinda wanted to leave that door open, like, "Maybe
Yeah,
down the road, like,
totally.
we
No,
can see where things go," you
yeah, I was
know?
like, I'm not ready to date right now,
Yeah.
but I really like spending time with you,
Yeah.
and, like, we'll see
Where it
where it
goes.
goes.
And at this point, I remember, like, I already had that whole moment in the library, so, like, I already know this is my future husband. And so I just with all the confidence in the world, the Lord probably just gave me this grace. I was like, "Okay, like, I get it." Like, I've actually been there before. I actually was just in that season where I was like, "I need a break from relationships. I need to, like, focus on my relationship with the Lord and, like, grow in my relationship with the Lord and who he's calling me to be," all that stuff. So I was like, "I get it, and, like, I want you to do that. Like, you should totally do that." However, I'll be here waiting. I literally was like, "I'm not going to date anybody else."
Yeah.
Like, I'm not interested in dating anybody. I've met all the men on campus, and I'm not interested. And so, I'll be waiting if you're ready,
Yeah.
like, when you're ready to date, you can ask me out on a date. Let me know. Like, I'll
Yeah.
say yes, and I'll be here.
It was mind-blowing the confidence of this woman to just be like, "Okay, well, I'm not gonna date anybody else, so I'll just wait for you."
And I remember
You're just
him being like, "I don't want to stop you
like,
from,
I
like,
don't
we
want
just
that
met, like, a month ago."
responsibility to, like, your heart is in my hands without me even knowing how I feel about anything yet.
Yeah, yeah, but I just knew, so I was like, "It's okay, like, you just take your time, whatever you
Just let me
need.
know.
We'll just be friends." And, like, that conversation, like, wasn't hard, like, I look back and, like, I could have walked away again, like, crying, just being like, "Oh my gosh, it's
Mhm.
not gonna work," but we just, like, kept walking to the library,
Yeah,
and
and we,
we
like, spend the next 2
studied
hours together.
we, like, spent the next 2 hours talking and studying for a test, and
And, like, luckily, it didn't even get awkward, like, the
no,
days, weeks
no,
after.
it
It was awesome.
wasn't. If anything, we started to get closer.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, that's what happened, is it was like, the feelings now were just unleashed, like, we had spoken this into
Yeah.
existence, that Mari liked me, so now I know that,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I told her I like spending time with her, and I see it happening in the future, but just not right now.
So then we kind of had so then after that, we had a few more conversations, I think, like, as we were growing in friendship of like, okay, like, we're kind of liking each other. Like, I think you kind of opened up a little bit more
Yeah.
about like, I
Yeah,
like
it
you.
didn't take long.
Like,
Like, it
yeah.
didn't take long. Like, my heart was won very, very quick. And so but I still felt like even though my heart has been, like, won by Mari and I know that I wanna date her and I wanna be with her, I still felt very much like I'm not the person, I don't have the foundation that I want
To
and
be the
to
man for
be
her.
the man for her. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or
And
like the
so
man like you wanted
or
to be.
exactly. And so
Yeah.
I was still, like, in this season of wanting to not date.
Yeah.
However, my heart was screaming at me to just date this girl, to just kiss this girl. And that's actually something that we had talked about was, in all of our past relationships, like, kissing was very common very early on in the relationship.
Yeah.
Even, like,
Like
before
before
we
we were
started
like,
even dating,
yeah.
like, before, like, in past relationships,
Yeah.
we would kiss our significant others, like, before we'd even start dating. And we wanted to make a very, like, concrete shift in
Yeah.
that mindset, and so we're like, yes, we both know that we like each other. We both know that Trey is kind of just still trying to work on himself right now,
Yeah.
but
We
no
need to
matter
like
how
pump the
much
brakes.
yeah, we need to pump the brakes, no matter how much we like each other, no how much we're tempted or how hard it gets, like, we will not kiss each other
Yeah.
until we're officially dating.
Yeah, because I know, like, we knew, like, until you were ready, and pretty much we were just waiting on the Lord. Like,
Yeah,
we were taking this time of friendship to discernment and prayer, and so we were like, "We're just gonna intentionally, like, literally just be friends and
yeah,
continue to get to know each other as friends and, like, pray." And we entered, like, a period of discernment of, like, a
yeah,
few months of, like, prayer, and we did talk about it, like,
we
discernment
did.
takes active, moves, and so we were, like,
Yeah,
every now and then checking on each other, like, "Okay, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How's your prayer?" Like, we wanted to discern this with the Lord and have the Lord show us, like,
yeah,
when the right time it was to move into, like, dating.
yeah, and this was, like, the very first time, at least in my life, and I think in your life too.
Yeah,
It was
same.
the first time in my life I ever tried to do the Lord's will.
Yeah.
I was like, this was a concept that was new to me. I was still in, like, my reversion, and I was like, "Okay, for the first time in my life, I'm going to do the Lord's will. Like, no matter
Mhm.
how much I wanna date you, Mari, like, I'm just gonna do the Lord's will." And so, it just didn't feel right, and so we just stayed as friends. And
Yeah.
not to say, like, for other couples out there, dating is discernment in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like, you can have a period of discernment before you start dating the guy, but, like, dating is discernment, so you don't need to discern that he's the one and your husband before you start dating
Yeah.
him. Like,
No.
dating is discernment in of itself,
Yeah.
but
We just
where
both
we
had
were
a particular
yeah,
situation where, like, we were intentionally, like,
we didn't
staying away
feel
from that to grow in relationship with the Lord until
exactly,
we, like, felt like He was calling us to it just
exactly.
because of the way our past
Mhm.
relationships had gone.
Yeah,
We knew that this was gonna be special, and we knew we wanted to do this right.
yeah,
And so we
and
were like, "We don't wanna rush into it. We want this to be, like, God-led and, like, God-centered." And so we wanted Him to lead
totally.
the choices we were
Yeah.
making.
So, we made that commitment to not kiss each other until we were officially dating,
Yeah.
and then we prayed for a sign.
Yeah.
Like, that was like, "God, like, we don't really know how to hear you yet, like, we're
Yeah.
still learning how to pray. So, just give us a sign, like, make it clear to us
Yeah.
that you're ready for us to start dating and to just pursue each other."
I remember we also, like, were trying to prepare ourselves to, like, enter into a Christ-centered relationship, and we were reading this book.
Yeah, because, like, neither of us had Christ-centered relationships
Yeah.
prior. This was a new experience for us. We were trying to learn about what that would look like.
Would look like, yeah, and so we read this book, Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love by Edward Tree. Highly recommend
Yeah,
to
highly
anybody
recommend.
who's dating or in a relationship or even married. I don't know, it's just,
Yeah,
like, such a good
so good.
book on literally, like, men and women.
It's John Paul II's
Yes,
theology of the body and love and
summarized.
responsibility
Mhm.
summarized and condensed into an easier to
Super
digest
easy
and to
format.
understand for somebody who in college who didn't know a whole lot about my faith. Like,
Yeah,
reading JP2, you're in the deep end.
yeah,
So this was a very good introductory level to what theology of the body is, what men
mhm,
and women are created for, how we're meant to be in a relationship.
yeah,
And so we each read that book to
and
just kind of prepare.
yeah, and I mean, that made it really beautiful, but I feel like it almost made it the way that much harder too,
Yes.
because, like, at this point, we're, like, talking to another, like a
Yeah.
person of the opposite sex who's, like, wanting to learn about chastity, and, I remember Trey one time, like, as we were discussing this book, like, he, like, took a moment to be like, "Hey, like, by the way, like, I should tell you, like, I'd really like to wait till marriage. Like, I don't know where you're at with that, but, like, I really want to make that commitment. And he was like, kind of like nervous, like, tell me. And I remember I was like, oh my gosh. Like I had made that commitment in my life and I had almost never encountered another man who would say who'd be the one to lead that and
Mhm.
who had made that commitment for himself. Like all the boyfriends I'd had were like, okay, like if you want to wait, that's fine. But like if you change your mind, let me know. It was always like, I'll do it because you're gonna do it. But like if you change your mind, like we don't have to wait. And so to have you be the one to lead that and be like, by the way, like I wanna wait till marriage, so, like, if you're not okay with that, this isn't gonna work. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is gonna work, like, don't worry." Like, I think I just, like, liked you 10 times more because you said that, and yet we weren't even kissing, and, like, we were still waiting for a sign, and
Yeah. Yeah, it was a definitely a funny period. It
yeah,
was like we were emotionally, we were date we were
pretty
we were
much.
pretty much dating. So,
We got to
um,
that
yeah.
point for sure, and I remember our friends even being
Mhm.
like, "Why aren't
Aren't
you
you guys
dating?"
dating?
Or like, "Why haven't you kissed?" And we
Yeah.
were just like, "We're waiting for the Lord," and they
Yeah,
were like,
and
"What does that
we're
mean?"
like, "We don't know. We're waiting."
So we were just, like, waiting for God to, like, show us,
Yeah.
and, like, you prayed
Mhm.
pretty specifically
So,
about it.
yeah, there was this one night, it was late, and I was walking Mari home to her dorm room, and it was late, and so
It
then
was, like, 2 a.m. or something like
yeah,
that.
I drop her off. Yeah, this is us not dating at the time, but I drop her off, don't kiss her because 'cause we're not kissing, and then on my walk back home to my dorm room, there is a Marian grotto on our campus, and so
Mhm.
I'm just like my heart is so, like, already, like, in love with Mari pretty much that I was like, "I Lord, like, I want to date her, why can't I date her right now? Like, this is all that I want."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's 2 AM. I stop at the Marian grotto, and I'm just, like, sitting there with Mary and Jesus, just pouring my heart out to God, um, and just asking for a sign or, like, tell me something about when I'll be ready or, like, what is your will? Like, Lord,
Yeah.
I surrender this to you no matter how bad I want this. I surrender this to you. I wanna do your will in all this. And, I mean, it sounds crazy, and I thought it was crazy myself because I've never had any experience like this, but I just felt in the depths of my heart that the Lord say, like, "There'll be a shooting star when you're ready." And I'm
Yeah.
just like, I brushed that off, like, "This is insane. Like, this is stupid, dumb." I'm like, "Done." I stand up, walk, leave the grotto. I'm like, I gotta get to bed. It's late. Like, it is late. I gotta go to sleep. And but I, like, can't shake this from my mind.
Like, you
It's
felt
like,
that
I'm just like
stay in your heart.
it did, and I was, like, so irritated because 'cause I'm like, "This is so dumb. Like, this is a shooting star? Are you kidding me? Like, this is so cheesy. This is from a movie." So, but anyways, I, like, walk back, I get to my room, and I'm like, something in me, no matter how badly I was trying to reject that thought that was stirred in my heart, I couldn't. And so I just started journaling, and I just journaled, like, my entire prayer and what I felt like the Lord said to me at that time. And I don't share this with Mari. This is just like because also I'm, like, a little bit embarrassed. I also have, like, don't think I've ever shared this with anybody outside of my mom maybe. So
I was gonna say
this is going to the world,
this
but
is actually a detail I've never shared on Instagram either.
yeah.
Like, this detail has not been shared publicly yet about our dating story, so this is a very exclusive
Yes. Well,
exclusive
part of
look
my heart.
that our Ever-Be listeners
Yes.
are getting.
So anyways, I don't share this with Mari, and
Mhm.
this is just something that's in my heart, and but every night, like, we're hanging out all the time, and a lot of times we're hanging out in the evening, and so then I'd have to walk Mari back to her dorm every night, and every night, I'm, like, walking just, like, with my eyes up in the sky, like,
Trying to find the
trying
shooting
to find the
star.
shooting star for the next, like, whatever, few weeks, month, and then finally, there's this one night, and we're walking across this parking lot to drop Mari off at her
Yeah,
dorm.
so this was after Easter break. We'd both gone home
Yeah,
for a
this is Easter
couple
Monday.
like, a couple days, and I think that was, like, the first time we'd, like, been apart since we, like, started hanging out, and so we were, like, texting, and I remember we were just like, "Oh my gosh, like,
Can't wait to
Lord,
see
like,
you.
yeah, I can't wait to see you, like, gosh, when are we gonna start dating?" You know?
Yeah.
And we just finished reading that book, and we were like, "Okay, like, we feel pretty prepared." Like, Lord, when is the time? And we were hanging out that first day back from break. Again, pretty late. And Trey's like, okay, like, let me walk you back to your apartment. Like, it's late. We should go to bed. And he's walking me back. We're crossing this parking lot on the way to my apartment. And you guys, again, this is going to sound like unreal, but I stopped us in our tracks because I saw this huge, like gigantic light in the sky that like crossed the sky. Like maybe it was actually like a comet or something like that. Like
I don't know the astrological terms.
Yeah, I don't know. But to be completely honest, you guys, like for a second, I thought it was a UFO. Like for a second, I was like, "Oh my gosh, aliens are real."
That's how big, how slow it was moving.
Because and here's the other part.
Like I've seen shooting stars,
Yes.
like all the time. Like it wasn't.
And you've probably seen shooting stars.
It wasn't like a new thing.
Yeah.
For me to see a shooting star, but like if you, as you know, like shooting stars, they're
quick,
small, fast, and like
and
in a
thin.
blink of an eye,
like you miss it.
Yeah, they're thin. They're just like
quick. Like if you're not looking in that moment, you miss it.
Yeah.
And
or if you like catch it out of the corner of your eye, by the time you look, it's already gone.
Yeah. And I was seeing this like really, really bright star like cross the sky, orange. like a white and orange tail was coming off of it. And a little bit of backstory here. In my life, I had never seen a shooting star. I was like 20 years old at that point, and I'd never seen a shooting star. And it had always been like my life's dream to see a shooting star, like my life's dream. And I actually went back and looked at home videos like a few months after that. I was just at home with my family. We were looking at home videos. And there's home videos of me when I was 5 that my parents captured of me like pretending that I was seeing shooting stars. Like I was dressed as a princess and I was like praying on shooting stars and saying like, "Oh my gosh, look, shooting stars," like in the living room, like just pretending. Like for some reason, like my heart just like loved, like I love stars and like I'd never seen one. And I just like always wanted to see one. Like I thought they were so magical.
Anyway, so we're walking together. We both see this.
Yeah, I like call. I'm like, "Trey, like look, like."
And so Amari starts just jumping up and down. Oh my god! I just the shooting. Did you see it? Trey.
I'm like freaking out, like so excited. Like my live stream just got completed. Like I just like I'm ecstatic. I just saw a shooting star. I'm like jumping up and down.
And I'm just ghost. Like
frozen.
Completely frozen. I felt my feet just become cement to the pavement.
And he wasn't, like he wasn't
I
moving.
feel the color from my face like drain.
Yes. And I'm like jumping everywhere and I look at him and he's just like staring at me. And his face looked white.
Like I was in disbelief. I just was like, was that real? Like, did you see that? Like, did you see that?
Yeah.
Did you see
he was like, did you see? I'm like, this is why I'm freaking out, Trey. Like, did you see that? He goes, yes. And I'm like,
I'm thinking I'm making this up at this point. Cause I'm like, oh, I just want to date Mari. I just saw a shooting star.
A huge shooting star. And I'm like, Trey, like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to see a shooting star. Like, this is my dream. Like, I've never seen a shooting star before. Can you believe it?
I couldn't believe that she'd never seen one before because I've seen so many.
And that it was like such a big deal to me.
And I was just like, I just couldn't believe that you've never seen one before. But then I was just like, okay, Mari, like
I have to tell you something.
And so then I recount to her that night that I walked her home, I don't know, a month prior.
Yeah, like a month prior.
And how I stopped at the grotto, had that prayer experience, how I tried shaking it off, but it wouldn't leave me. And how I've been looking in the sky every night since, looking for a shooting star. And now.
And you never saw one.
Yeah.
Until this moment with me together.
So then, like a romantic movie, she just embraced and started kissing.
And we had our first kiss. And well, Trey, before we kissed, Trey was like, "So Mari, like, will you be my girlfriend?"
I had to
and
ask
like,
first.
yeah, he had to ask officially. He asked the official question. And obviously I said yes. And then we kissed. And it was like magical. And he walked me back to the apartment the rest of the way. And I remember walking back and like feeling like I was like gliding, like floating, like all the way back, like feet were not on the ground. And I remember when we said goodbye at the door, you said you kissed me goodnight and you said to me.
I also said, like, I felt this, like this weight and this almost holy fear where it was like not scared of like the immediate future. I wasn't scared of Mari or anything, but like I was scared because I knew the gravity of what just happened. Like
you
I knew
that this was like so much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, that this was so much bigger than ourselves. And this relationship was going to be something amazing and special. And I was just like, whoa. And so it was not like a fear, but it was just like a fear of the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
Like, almost like, just a fear of what God's plan. Like, this is real. Like, this is real. This is not like, this is not
a drill.
No, this is like the most real thing I've ever had.
Yes. And I remember you said that to me, like you kissed me goodnight and you said like, I'm scared. And I was like, me too.
Yeah.
And we just said goodnight and you walked back and
Yeah.
I went up again to my apartment and ran into my best friend's room. Again, this is 2 a.m. in the morning or 1 a.m. in the morning. My very two best friends shared a room in the apartment we were living in. And I didn't care that they were sleeping. They actually did have a big exam the next day. And I knew that, but I was like, this cannot wait. And I went in there and I like pulled on their blankets and I jumped up and down and I was like, you guys, like we're dating. Like it's official. Like
And they're like, you've been dating for like a month.
literally
Chill.
to them, it was like, congratulations. Like, could this not have waited till the morning? Like we already
Yeah.
knew this was going to happen. But I told them about the shooting star and my best friend was so groggy. She was like, okay, this is like, this is so great, Mari. Okay.
Yeah. And then I just went back on my way back to my dorm room, stopped at the grotto, and just poured out my heart and praise and thanksgiving, and
Thank
it was
God.
beautiful.
And then we started our dating era. We dated for like a year and a half, and those years were still literally like some of the best memories
Oh
of my
gosh.
life.
Yeah.
It was just so much fun.
So much fun.
Like I just remember we were like such like childlike, like little
Yeah.
kids, like just like so spontaneous and excited. Like our life was still so like full together. Like I don't know, we didn't really get out of that honeymoon phase for like a long
No, I
time.
don't know if we ever did when we were dating.
I don't think we ever did when we were dating. And it was beautiful because we were still involved in these Bible studies, like faith, like it started our relationship. It still kept going as like the
Yeah.
center of our relationship. And we did a few things to continue to try and cultivate that and to keep that at the center of our relationship.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
like that wasn't something we had done before. And so we were both like excited and passionate and like committed to like making this an important part of our relationship. So we did the Marian consecration together, the
Yeah.
33 days
Yeah,
to morning glory.
That summer we were apart. So to encourage
Mhm.
growth in our spiritual lives and to
Yeah.
like connect on a deeper level, we did the 33 days of morning glory and consecrated ourselves to
Mhm.
Virgin Mary.
Yeah, and then we kind of kept up like scripture stuff. This time a little bit more intentionally, I think. Like I think in the years following, like not necessarily that spring when we started dating, but like afterwards, like we would meet up and do like Lectio or like go to adoration together or
Yeah.
pray a rosary after mass or something like that. And started kind of getting to know each other's friends and just having a great time.
Yeah.
Like it was just
So fun.
it was so much fun. And even though I had already known in my heart the whole time that we were going to get married, I think it was only like, I don't know, like between month 4 and 6, maybe like 4 and 5 that we both kind of were like, we could really see a future with each other.
Oh yeah. Yeah, at that point, like we both knew very, very early on, like
Yeah.
this was the real thing.
This was like the one.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about that, trying to be as prudent as possible. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like, what do you want for your future? Where do you want to live? How many kids do you want? What do you
Yeah.
want your marriage to look like? Stuff like that. And
Mhm.
we dated for a year and a half, like I said, before we got engaged. And that'll have to be a whole nother episode, actually, like where we dive into all the details of how we discerned that God was calling us to get engaged and how
Oh,
our
yeah.
engagement happened.
That's a whole nother story.
We'll have Trey come back on again to dive into that.
Yeah.
So we'll leave you on that cliffhanger. But all in all, that's the scoop on
That
our
is
dating
the
journey.
story.
That's our love story. And I feel like we haven't told all the details like this in a really
Yeah.
long time.
It's fun playing it back.
It
like
is.
It's fun like reliving all those memories with you.
It
Like you
is.
said, before we were dating, and those dating years were some of the best years of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. It just made me fall more in love with you.
Me too.
I love you. Thank you for coming on,
Oh my gosh,
sweetie,
yes.
and sharing
Absolutely.
all this.
I'm so happy to be here.
This was so fun.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing our love story.
Yeah. Yes. And I hope it was inspiring too. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I look at what the Lord has called us to do and to like share our life and like create all this content. And sometimes it's like, wow, like I can't believe we're letting so many people in on our life. But at the same time, like I know that the Lord uses
Yeah.
our story to touch other people's hearts. So I hope that, you know, if you're in a period of discerning or dating or, you know, wanting to make Christ the center of your relationship and maybe it's not yet, like I hope this gave you some practical ways to be able to do that and some hope and inspiration of how to do that. And if you're like looking for the one, I hope this gave you hope that like there are Catholic men
Yes.
out there and
Or Catholic girls out
yeah, or Catholic women, and to like keep your standards and make
Yeah.
that list and pray for your future spouse every single night, you guys. Like that's my biggest piece of advice is like work on your relationship with the Lord, pray, build your own prayer life, but like in that prayer routine, like every day, like pray for your future spouse, and the
Yeah, we
Lord
need it.
will bring
The
it.
boys need it.
The boys need the prayer.
But also, like, I think it's just a huge testament to a Christ-centered relationship. Like, I never witnessed or like experienced that. Like, none of my friends had anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I never knew how to navigate that. And so I'm really
Mhm.
happy that you're able to share this story with your audience, because it's very few and far between, like, these God-centered relationships.
Mhm.
And
We need more of them.
and we need more of them. And above all, like, they are the best.
They're
Like,
literally the
honestly, they
best.
are the best.
So we'll leave you with that. Next time, we're gonna have to dive into our engagement or something like that at some point down the road, because that's another good story.
Okay.
Okay, but at this point, we've probably been recording for like at least an hour or
Yeah.
more. So
You're probably tired of hearing that
yeah,
story.
yeah. If you've stayed this long, congrats. Thank you for holding out this long, but we gotta go. So we'll catch you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and on social media, and give me a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That helps me and the show out so much. Also, make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at EverBePodcast. And if you want more content like this and you don't already follow me, you can also follow me on Instagram at mari.c.wagner. And may his praise ever be on our lips. God bless.